Gym owner banned Mike Tyson for being too old, then watched him destroy the heavy bag. The fluorescent lights of Iron Paradise Gym buzzed overhead, casting a harsh, clinical glow over the rows of gleaming equipment and the sweat-stained mats. The air was thick with the scent of rubber, chalk dust, and the sharp tang of exertion. The rhythmic clang of weights, the grunts of effort, and the pounding of fists against heavy bags created a symphony of physical dedication. This was a serious gym, a place where young, aspiring fighters came to hone their craft, to push their limits, and to prove their worth. At the front desk, clipboard in hand, stood the owner, a man named Derek the Hammer Hansen. Hansen was a former middleweight contender, his career cut short by injury, and he now channeled his competitive spirit into running what he considered the premier training facility in the city. Hansen prided himself on maintaining a certain standard, a certain image. His gym was for the young, the hungry, the elite. He had no patience for weekend warriors, or as he often put it, has-beens trying to relive their glory days. He scanned the gym floor with a critical eye, noting the intensity of the workouts, the precision of the techniques, the raw power on display. Everything was as it should be. Then, the front door swung open, and a figure stepped inside. He was a powerful man, his frame still imposing despite the passage of years, clad in a simple, worn tracksuit. His bald head gleamed under the fluorescent lights, and the distinctive tattoo around his left eye was immediately recognizable. It was Mike Tyson. Mike walked slowly towards the front desk, his gaze sweeping over the gym with a quiet appreciation. He had heard good things about Iron Paradise, and he was looking for a place to train, to maintain his fitness, to stay connected to the sport that had defined his life. Hansen, however, didn't see a legend. He saw an old man past his prime, someone who would disrupt the carefully cultivated atmosphere of his gym. He looked up from his clipboard, his expression immediately hardening. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone clipped and unwelcoming. Mike nodded, a small, polite smile on his face. "Yeah, I'm looking to get a membership. I'd like to train here," Hansen scoffed, a dismissive sound that echoed slightly in the cavernous space. "A membership? Look, pal, this isn't a senior citizens fitness center. This is a serious training facility for serious athletes." He gestured towards the gym floor, where young fighters were sparring, their movements sharp and explosive. "We cater to a specific clientele, people who are actively competing, people who are at the top of their game." Mike's smile faded slightly, replaced by a look of quiet understanding. "I understand," he said calmly, "but I'm still training. I still want to stay in shape. I'm not looking to compete, just to maintain my fitness." Hansen shook his head, his expression unyielding. "I'm sorry, but I have to maintain a certain standard here. And frankly, you're too old. You'd be a liability, a distraction. My members come here to train with the best, to be inspired by the best, not to watch someone who's past their prime struggle through a workout." He then leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his chest, a clear signal that the conversation was over. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This gym isn't for you." The words, delivered with such casual cruelty, hung heavy in the air. A few young fighters nearby, who had been stretching, paused, their eyes darting towards the front desk, sensing the tension. Mike remained silent for a moment, his gaze fixed on Hansen. He didn't argue, didn't raise his voice, but a subtle shift occurred in his posture, a quiet hardening of his resolve. He simply nodded, a small, almost imperceptible movement. "I see," he said, his voice still calm, but now laced with a quiet edge. "You're banning me because I'm too old." Hansen shrugged, a dismissive gesture. "Call it what you want. I'm protecting the integrity of my gym. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." He then turned his attention back to his clipboard, effectively dismissing Mike. Mike stood there for a moment longer, his gaze sweeping over the gym floor, taking in the young fighters, the gleaming equipment, the heavy bags swaying gently from their chains. He then, without another word, turned and walked towards the exit. But instead of leaving, he paused near a row of heavy bags, the largest one in the gym, a massive, leather-bound monster that hung ominously from a reinforced steel chain. He looked at the bag, then back at Hansen, who was still focused on his clipboard, oblivious to Mike's lingering presence. A few of the young fighters, their curiosity piqued, had stopped their workouts and were now watching Mike with a mixture of confusion and anticipation. And if you're wondering what kind of man can endure such blatant disrespect without a single flinch, or what hidden power lies beneath that quiet exterior, then you absolutely need to hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you won't want to miss the truth that's about to unfold, a truth that will make this gym owner regret every single word. This story is far from over, and the real consequences are about to be delivered. Mike slowly, deliberately, removed his tracksuit jacket, revealing a simple black tank top that showcased the still powerful musculature of his arms and shoulders. He then walked up to the heavy bag, his movements calm and unhurried. He didn't wrap his hands, didn't put on gloves. He simply stood before the bag, his gaze fixed on its worn leather surface. The gym, which had been filled with the sounds of training, gradually fell silent, every eye now fixed on the quiet figure standing before the massive heavy bag. Even Hansen, sensing the shift in atmosphere, finally looked up from his clipboard, his brow furrowing in irritation. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" Hansen called out, his voice sharp. "I told you to leave!" Mike didn't respond. He simply took a deep breath, a slow, deliberate inhalation. And then, with a sudden, explosive movement that defied his age, he unleashed a devastating right hook. The sound was unlike anything the young fighters had ever heard. It wasn't a thud or a smack. It was a thunderclap, a sonic boom that seemed to shake the very foundations of the gym. The heavy bag, all 300 pounds of it, didn't just swing. It exploded backwards, the chain groaning under the sudden, immense force, swinging wildly in a wide, violent arc. The entire gym froze. Every fighter, every trainer, every person present stood in stunned absolute silence. Their jaws dropped, their eyes wide with disbelief. They had just witnessed a display of raw, primal power that seemed impossible, a force of nature unleashed in a single devastating blow. The heavy bag continued to swing, its momentum carrying it back and forth, the chain creaking ominously. Mike, his expression unchanged, simply stood there, his right fist still clenched, his gaze fixed on the swaying bag. He then, with the same calm deliberation, unleashed a left hook. Another thunderclap. The bag jerked violently in the opposite direction, the chain now screaming in protest. He then began a combination, a flurry of punches that were so fast, so precise, so devastatingly powerful that they seemed to blur together. Left hook, right uppercut, left jab, right cross. Each punch landed with the force of a sledgehammer, each impact sending shockwaves through the heavy bag and reverberating through the entire gym. The leather surface of the bag began to distort, the seams straining under the relentless assault. The chain, designed to hold hundreds of pounds, groaned and creaked, threatening to snap. The young fighters watched in awe, their mouths agape, their training forgotten. They were witnessing a masterclass in power, a demonstration of what true, unbridled force looked like. Hansen, who had been so quick to dismiss Mike, now stood frozen behind his desk, his clipboard forgotten, his face pale with shock and dawning, horrifying realization. He finally recognized the face, the tattoo, the sheer, undeniable presence. The old man he had banned, the has-been he had dismissed, was none other than Mike Tyson, the baddest man on the planet, and he was currently destroying the gym's most expensive heavy bag with his bare fists. Mike continued his assault, each punch a testament to years of disciplined training, to a lifetime of honing his craft. He wasn't just hitting the bag, He was dominating it, controlling it, bending it to his will. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity but was probably only 30 seconds, Mike stopped. He stepped back, his chest heaving slightly, a thin sheen of sweat on his brow. The heavy bag swung wildly, groaning on its chain, its surface now visibly dented and distorted. The gym remained in absolute, stunned silence. Then, slowly, one of the young fighters began to clap. Then another, and another. Within seconds, the entire gym erupted in thunderous applause, a spontaneous outpouring of respect and awe. They had just witnessed a legend in action, a display of power that would be etched in their memories forever. Mike, his expression still calm, simply picked up his tracksuit jacket and walked back towards the front desk. Hansen, his face now a deep crimson, a mixture of shame and terror, could only stare. Mike stopped in front of him, his gaze unwavering. "You said I was too old," Mike said, his voice a low rumble, still carrying his distinctive lisp, but now imbued with an undeniable authority. "You said I'd be a liability, a distraction." He then gestured towards the still swaying heavy bag. "Does that look like someone who's too old to you?" Hansen stammered. "Mr. Tyson, I didn't know it was you. I made a terrible mistake. Please, I apologize. You're welcome to train here anytime, free of charge, for life." Mike simply looked at him, his expression unreadable. "I don't need your charity, Mr. Hansen," he said, "and I don't need your gym. But maybe you need to rethink what too old really means. Age is just a number. Power, discipline, respect, those are earned, and they don't fade with time." He then turned, walked towards the exit, and disappeared into the afternoon sunlight, leaving behind a gym full of awestruck fighters and a humble gym owner who had just learned a lesson he would never forget. Respect isn't taken by force, it's earned by character and an undeniable, inherent power that transcends age. Silent doesn't mean powerless. Sometimes the quietest person carries the greatest power, and the most profound lessons are taught not with words, but with the chilling, devastating truth of who you really are.